Hi there. I am so thrilled to always have Randi Buckley talking about boundaries with me. Her conversations last in my head for a really long time. And so I just wanted to give you a few of my reflections about that talk that I did. I also sent it to a bunch of my clients who this is such a relevant conversation for me in my groups and for people in their individual work with me. So I also wanted to let you know some of those key discussions, some of those gems. I was thinking about when Randy was saying when her work with boundaries started in the playground. I was thinking about my counseling work started in college, probably in high school, where I found people coming to me just to discuss their issues and how to resolve them. And so I totally identify with the innate talents that we have, and we notice those talents younger than maybe we should. Not maybe we should, but they just come out younger, like what your natural draw is in the world. I completely understand that. And actually, um, she's a natural boundary setter. And I can also say for myself, I've been a natural therapist for a very long time, just feeling like that's my groove. That's how my mind thinks. So one of the things I loved about her talk so much is just the reframing of boundaries, boundaries being something that we use to be respectful to other people, that it's actually about respect. Like if we respect ourselves enough to set a boundary, that's one thing. And if we feel like people are respectful to us, that they respect our boundary, if we are also looking at what is that other person's boundary, I don't want to cross it because I really care about that person, admire that person, want to know that person more, want to be in a relationship that feels reciprocal. That's also respecting boundaries. So I love that. I also love the idea about that boundaries are cultivation. It's not like you say, okay, I have this one boundary. I'm always going to not answer the phone after 9 o'clock because I want to make sure that I'm going to sleep, that kind of thing. That maybe we also talk about, well, it's not always about being so rigid with our boundaries. It's also being understanding about why we have them and that we might want to change them. And we might need to give ourselves some time to think about that. I love the concept too that some people in our lives who don't have really good boundaries, that we have to like manage them more and think about, okay, where's their no boundaries and why does that bother us? And we're so mad at them. Like, how can we talk about these things with them without being irritated? And then the people in our lives that have um, that we don't hold stringent boundaries around. And maybe that's because we want them in our lives so much. We want them to be present in our lives so much that we just drop the boundaries that we have for them. So I've said a lot, and I want to just recap. So I've said this whole thing about, and I'm going to say this in a question for you to think about. So my first question to you is, what are you innately good at, and how did you know? What was that thing? What was your personality's natural talent? Did you figure it out? Are you a leader? Are you someone who's an intellectual? Do you love to share ideas? Do you cook a lot and share your cooking tips? What is your innate talent? And when did you discover it? The other thing is the thought of respecting boundaries, other people's boundaries, and respecting your own. What's that concept like for you to hear? That if we reframed boundaries as respect, it's a lot easier to think about, isn't it? Because it's really something that you want to give yourself and you want to give another person. And then the idea of cultivating boundaries, that actually as we grow, our boundaries grow, and our cultivation of different boundaries and capacities grow too. So I love that thought, is that you can probably handle a lot of hard conversations if you're really working on your boundaries. And that's cool because then we can also deal with confrontations, setting boundaries really clearly, not actually even getting into a conversation, a back and forth about what someone might want. I was recently on a call to my brother, and I was saying, "Oh, do you want to meet here? This would be a really cool place to meet ahead of this family reunion that we were having, and everyone comes at a distance. And he was like, no, 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 we're just going to meet you there. And he said it a few times. And I was like, oh, okay. He's really serious about that. He's not going to be doing anything but going to the reunion. And he was really clear. It was like the other part of the conversation wasn't up for discussion. And it wasn't up for discussion in a negative way. He was really cheery about it. Um, and I just liked that model of holding a boundary. You don't have to really talk about it. You might want to do a direct confrontation about it, but you don't really have to. You can just like state what your boundary is and state it a few times. The cultivation of how you hold your boundaries and what your boundaries are. And then the whole idea about boundaryless people, and that we might get this feeling inside ourselves about, okay, wait a second, why am I feeling so angry or frustrated with this person? That does, and that maybe it's because all the boundary work is left to you. So you know people in your life like that. Are you in those kinds of situations where you're feeling like you're always having to say, okay, your half of the bill is, or I can't go if you're later than this, or I usually go to sleep by 10. So when you call at 11:30 at night, that really throws me off because I think it's an emergency, those kinds of things, right? So it's hard to be with people that have no or very, very different boundaries than you. And so it takes some conversation. And then the people that you'll drop your boundaries for. And do you understand why? Why is that you'll drop your boundaries for some people and not for other people? It's kind of a curious thing to think about that. So here's a few other thoughts I have for you that have to do with boundaries and my ideas of boundaries. So here's one of the other things that I just loved that Randy was able to bring out in her conversation with me, which is I was asking, like, how will you be able to decide what to discern for? What is important in terms of being able to set a boundary? Like, how do you know you need to set one? Right? Okay. And her thought was, and her sort of refocusing this for me was that think about the value that's not being honored in yourself. What's the value? And make that value a verb. So you can evoke it, or you can try to embrace that value. So it's like value of your time, right? Or value of um, your effort. So how would you make that value a verb? And that would be really important to figure out. I'm going to see if I can think about how to figure it out myself. Okay, so I figured it out. I figured out how to give you an example about this. So let's say that we're looking at where the boundary needs to be, and you're looking at what's missing. What's the value that's really important to you that's missing in the situation? So, for example, maybe compassion's missing or humor is missing. I always think about like peace is missing. Like I want it to be peaceful. So my choice about the action would be asking for or evoking in myself peace. So I might be letting something go, or I might be asking for it a little bit more. Hey, I just want us to get along today. And so that's really what I'm asking for. Or I also might be giving something so that I can have peace. Like, hey, sure, whatever you want to do, that's completely fine with me. Because for me, what I'm wanting more of is just ease. And so it doesn't really matter to me what I have to do to get that. I would rather let go of any expectations to have that. And so my boundary is kind of enforced in a completely different way. It's enforced via the thing that's missing for me, the value that's missing for me. So that's the cheat sheet that Randy's talking about, is whatever's missing for you, bring it in either yourself or ask for it. I love that. Learning so much more about boundaries every time I study them a little bit, especially with Randy Buckley. There's just so many other angles to boundaries than yes or no, um, or frustration, or just not getting involved. There's so much more nuances about that. So for me, a lot of times I think about boundaries as accepting another person too. So if I have a sense that somebody is forgetful or late or not initiating, that that I always feel like I want to make sure that I don't get caught up in whatever it is that their deal is. So I might move when I'm setting a boundary to take care of myself better. Like I'll meet you there, or um, yeah, I just want to make sure we're still on for tomorrow. And in that, I have a lot of flexibility in myself that I don't need it to be a certain way. I'd rather just not go into whatever I feel like is that person's sort of work that they have to do on themselves. I might want to just set my boundaries by creating my own actions about not getting involved with that. Or no, I think I'm going to drive myself there and just be there. And that way, you know, to myself, I'm saying I'll have a lot more say on when I want to go, when I want to, um, if I'm there early, what else I can do. I might investigate it or take a walk during that time or something while I'm waiting, those kinds of things. So I'll take care of myself in the boundary setting so that I don't have to deal with whatever is that growing edge for that person and confronting that growing edge. So one of the focuses, I think, in this conversation that I'm having, just in reflection of boundaries with Randy Buckley and our conversation, is that it's a boundaries are a you centered thing, right? It's based on your comfort level, it's based on your values, it's based on what you feel like you can handle, what you want to handle, what you're asking for, what you're willing to give. It's really about your own personal work on yourself and making yourself feel more and more comfortable in your situation. So if you're in a friendship or a relationship that you're starting to feel uncomfortable in, I think one of the places to look is, what do I need to do to make myself more comfortable, and do that first, and then be able to work on communicating what it is that you have to set up for yourself in order to make the interaction work. And it's more you focused. And then in consideration is like, yes, and there's reasons why I really want to have this person in my life. I just don't want to get involved with these parts of that person, or to feeling over responsible or feeling like I have to do more work than them. So that's the growing edge, is to continue to think about your own evolution, how you're trying to be in relationships with people, why they're important, maybe the limitation of that person, and then really working it into your comfort level. Because I think sometimes we can't really be ourselves if we haven't set up a situation enough that lets us be able to focus just on that, just on what we're willing to give, what we're receiving, the fun we want to have, or the intellectual connection we want to have with another person. So that comes from really also calling in your own grounding, your own sense of security, reminder of your own capacity, being in the present moment. All of those good things come with boundary setting too, because we can't set really good boundaries if we're not really centered and grounded in ourselves. So, more to come on self growth and looking at yourself. I love to bring these speakers in. I love to get my mind just churning about certain things. I hope you've enjoyed this talk as much as I have, and I look forward to our next connection. Bye for now.